Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Pete. I'm going to talk about better game dev. I came from working as a game developer to doing web development, and then I'm going back into real-time space at the moment. So I guess this is some of my thoughts and experiences over that time, and hopefully it's sort of cohesive. We'll see how we go. So what does a healthy ecosystem look like? Well, first of all, to have an ecosystem at all, you need to be sharing with each other, sharing code. Some of this looks obvious for web developers. For game developers, it's not so obvious. Traditionally, there's a lot of proprietary stuff. There's a lot of reinventing wheels. So going from web to game development can feel a bit like going back in time sometimes. Okay, so you need to be able to, you need an open culture. You also need an architecture that's modular, that makes sense. So if I write some code, it can fit in with your code, For example, this is where we get the fun stuff. If I write a UI library, you write a state management library, we're both talking about the DOM or something like that, some sort of common ground. And so this idea of once you have open culture and modern architecture, that's when you get cool stuff. That's when you get powerful abstractions. Okay, so on open culture, of course, a game engine would need to be open to be able to do that. The game engine is kind of like the rock of a game dev community. That kind of needs to, it sets the tone a lot for that community. We've had a really, really wild year, particularly about this. Earlier this year, Unity, they introduced a fee retroactively, which would have put a lot of indie studios out of business. And it was like this big wake-up call. They walked it back, they fired the CEO, but it was kind of too late. The ship had sailed. We all sort of looked at this and go like, maybe we don't want to build companies on proprietary engines that'll swap out fees like this. So here we've got some of the newer players that are starting to, they're open source engines, and they're also very active communities. So just on that note, you also need an open package manager. So again, don't pick on Unity. I love you. I spent most of my life on Unity, but they've got an asset store. But again, because they've got free and paid, it's not like NPM at all. You could, for example, get some good AI code, but it's not going to depend on another. You don't have that tree of dependencies, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like everything's very isolated, so it does behave differently. Modular architecture. So I guess the idea behind this one is having that common language. Scenes have been very popular discussion topic over the last year or so. NVIDIA is really pushing for this hard. Of course, they're on the more complex end of things. Format called universal scene description is kind of like what's used by Pixar or Amazon robotics warehouses, where they're doing really heavy-duty simulation, thousands of developers working on the same thing or the same animation. For web developers and indie devs, we've got these smaller formats like GLTF. So they're used to describe transform hierarchies. So for example, the iAccelerate building would have a room, would have a chair, etc. But another important element to them is they're extendable. So you have a ball. You can also describe the physics of that ball, and a couple of different game engines, if they agree on the implementation, can implement that physics in their own way. So there's that sort of that extendability, and also just one more note is that they're portable. Scene descriptions, they could be like JSON. They can be sent serialized and deserialized, that sort of thing. Put in source control. It's important. And there's one particular, so the sorts of things you can do once you have that. There's one particular thing that, this is a rabbit hole that I went down about a year ago. I haven't come up from it yet. And that's applying that sort of modular hierarchical system that, that we get so many wins from in the DOM, even in transform hierarchies, applying that same thing to behavior, which is notoriously the hardest thing in game development, is all these random things interacting with each other. So having some sort of way of modularizing that, of swapping this part in and out, we're hoping to get the same wins that we've seen in the DOM, with things like React. So there's a little bit of talk about a talk, but this is Kevin Dill. He made a really good talk about this. The thing that I love about it is not so much his implementation, but his point that behavior should be as easy to use and as awesome as what we have with, component frameworks in the web dev world. The idea being, we should be expecting more from these tools. And I guess one more point I wanted to make here is that it's to really emphasize that modularity. So just like, for example, you could have a React plotting component library. You could also have like a navigation library or something like that, and just pop it in, pop it out. Idea behind that. Okay, and so this is the reason why I'm doing all this. This is Beatmash, is the very, very early stage startup that I'm working on. So it's a well-being simulator. The idea is like, I don't know, you want to understand more about your behavior, maybe your beer drinking habits or something like that, then what you could do is, sort of create a little simulation, explore some of those ideas, watch it play out, and hopefully gain some insights. Of course, the reason why I drink might be different from the reason why someone else drinks. So it's really important in this use case that people have really deep ability to customize that behavior. And these are non-technical people. So you're really trying to bubble up all that complexity in a really nice abstraction. So one of the parts of that is, which I'll go into, but being able to, like, for example, we've got an NPM, so having some sort of NPM of behavior, something like that. So the implementation, this is so Bevy is a game engine that I'm using. This is a behavior library for Bevy that uses that scene hierarchy to describe, for example, a behavior tree, or you could use it to describe state machines, anything you want really. Well, not anything, but you can do reinforcement learning with it, you can do utility AI. There's a lot of opportunities, and they don't need to be one or the other. Often you could have, for example, here's an example. So, for example, the navigation might make more sense as a behavior tree, whereas the attack might make more sense as a state machine. So you want to be able to chop and change, and also you want to be able to include other people's, have dependencies. So your behavior scene might describe, have references. They almost look like Git submodules or something. They have references to other scenes, and so that's the idea behind that. So once let's say you've written something like that, then you need kind of like a layer on top of the registry. So if you imagine you got like NPM, for Rust it's crates.io. You kind of want to be able to say, okay, well here's a scene, I need to resolve the sub-scenes. So that's all that is. It's probably more complicated than it needs to look. But if you go to beatmatch.com, that's sort of what you got there, and that's what it's doing. So you say, okay, the user says, hey, I want to check out that enemy scene. And then Beatmatch says, oh, crates.io, I'm going to unpack that tarball. Then I'm going to grab that scene. Oh, that scene has a subdependency. And then it goes through that loop. The really nice thing about using someone else's package manager is that does all the, the log file. You just use their log file, so you don't need to. I've got no idea how you do all that, so it's a bit of a hack. So join Bevy. Bevy's a Rust game engine. It's at a really, really exciting phase. We're probably going to have an editor in about, I probably shouldn't estimate, about a year maybe, something like that. It's just a random guess. But Bevy's got a really, really friendly community on the Discord. It's a lot of really fun place to hang out. Learning Bevy is probably one of the easiest ways to learn Rust as well. because one of the hardest parts about Rust is they call like the borrow checker. Oh, I own this state, so you're not allowed to look at it or whatever, mutate it. With Bevy, they handle all that for you. So you end up writing really nice systems and it all kind of comes together really nicely. I could talk for days about how much I love Bevy. And one more reason why you should join Bevy is robots. Bevy runs on robots. Bevy runs on little Arduinos. So you can imagine the same code that you write for like a simulator, you actually run on the device, exactly the same code. So, I mean, I think I'm one of the only people in the community doing that. So the possibilities there, I think, are really, really exciting. This is a little dream project. It's still in the works, but the idea is you take one of those $40 robot arms and you give it a phone, and then it's got all the capabilities of a phone, which is quite a lot. So that's kind of a way to, you could get kids pretty into, to have a lot of fun with these robots. And I'm going to keep talking. So we're used to saying like a hello world of an Arduino. It's like maybe it's a robot scurrying around the ground. It can reverse if it sees a wall. But that doesn't really make sense in 2024. I think we should expect a bit more from our hello world of robotics. You put a phone there, everyone's got a phone, the cost of the device is the same, and then you've got all your, you've got everything. You've got a screen, you've got, absolutely everything. Okay, yeah, thanks. That's my talk. Any questions?
What's the editor in Bevy you're going to make? What does that do? What can I do with the Bevy editor?
The Bevy editor that the community is building is a game engine editor. So it'll be it'll have the same capabilities as game engines like Unity and Godot. As you can see, I'm pushing for, and this isn't just me. There's other people in the community talking about rethinking how a game engine editor could work, especially in an open source space. What are the possibilities? One of the interesting things about Bevy is its architecture. They call it like an ECS architecture. It does open up some extra capabilities. You can do some pretty fun stuff with it. So hopefully something like a regular game engine editor, but with even more.
What's ECS?
So ECS stands for Entity Component System. There's a couple of reasons why people love it. One is, your CPU loves it because it kind of looks like a SQL database in memory, right? It's like, so you just got these lines and lines and lines. And what happens is when you want to make some changes, you're reading from the same place over and over again. So you're not getting what they call these cache misses. You're getting cache hits. You can just go boom, boom, boom. Everything's in memory. And the other thing that comes out of that is it turns out that you can have a really well architected game engine and really well architected applications. They tend to avoid the spaghettification that we see in some other models. For example, the game object model or the actor model.
I think one of the key things with Bevy and ECS is that you can write queries against the system that can be reused, and it's a really powerful way to address different types of entities.
Yeah. Queries are so cool. It's awesome. Yeah, hard to go back once you go ACS. Yeah. All right. Thank you.